design and realism and trying to create depth and texture and all types of stuff. And it was amazing. It completely changed my life because I was in art school trying to figure this stuff out. Okay, I'm in art school. This is going to teach me what I need to know. And it did.
Yeah.
And then I picked up Guy's book and it was like, oh, this is everything that I should have been taught.
Right. Makes a lot of connections.
That was the Bible, man. That book.
Right.
Bible.
Still is to me, man.
Being able to make those connections with painting, with like art, abstract art, any kind of art, and making those connections with tattooing and like seeing from a tattooer's perspective, and being a guy, someone who's like can make those connections so well because he spent so much time doing it. It was just so easy for my brain to just like absorb all of that, become a much better artist from it.
Yeah. Well,
we have another podcaster who's joined us. We've got Kyle on from the Bridging the Gap podcast, where Kyle is interviewing exceptionally experienced tattooers, older tattooers. It's amazing. But
awesome.
So yeah, I wanted to, and actually, I thought this was a good way to introduce Kyle to Bob. Maybe that would be a fun interview. Bob laying a lot of history that you have in your noggin there.
Wait, who is it?
So Kyle's interviewing old timers that have lots of great stories that we should be making sure all the apprentice types hear.
That's really cool.
My hearing sucks, man. I'm going deaf, but
I just think you have great stories, Bob. I mean, last night we were talking about one of the tattoos you got done by Tom Renshaw, and you were like, yeah, man, it was crazy. Like, you lost part of the stencil partway through it, and you just got in there with the little corner of the mag. Yeah. That was an awesome story, and it's still one of my favorite tattoos that I've ever seen in my life.
yeah, man. I mean, it's like 23 years old, I think. But we did it 16 hours in one day.
Wow.
On my calf, and it's Jimmy. He's on stage. He's kneeling down. It's not the one where he set his guitar and player. Everybody thinks that when they see it. It's he's got his guitar laid on the stage and he's pulling the strings off it. He's wearing this crazy coat, like the coat, the jacket Prince wears.
Yeah.
I can't describe it, but it's.
I know what you're talking about, though.
Tons of detail, and then 16 hours. That's why it took so long. But Tom, he starts from the bottom and works his way up. Almost looks like something being printed out. So he gets halfway up, and the first half is completely finished, done, and then the upper part is complete stencil, hasn't been touched yet. So he just keeps working his way up. So you don't wipe the stencil off while you're working.
Mm-hmm.
But he got to the face, and he was shading the face and the hair and stuff, and the teeth, because you can see his full. He was like smiling, but there were teeth in there, and the stencil completely wiped away. The head's like that big,
Right.
And so if it was me, I would have gotten a ballpoint pen and drew him back in and tattooed him with a super tight 3-liner. It should be a single needle, would be the right needle for that, but I don't never use singles. But Tom used single needles, but he didn't. He just went in there with a 7 mag, used the corner of a 7 mag, one needle off the corner, and put the teeth in there. He didn't draw them in or anything. He just tattooed them in there with the corner of a mag. And it looks like it was done with a single needle.
Really?
And they're perfect,
Just
and
that
it's
perfect use of that edge there.
Yeah, just catching that one needle, It's like using a single needle, but
Yeah, no,
on
right.
the corner of the mag. But I couldn't do that. I don't have the confidence to try that,
Right. Also, so teeth too. So it's just like all it takes is that one or 2 needles hitting, and then you got a weird black spot right in there. It's like what's on its tooth.
Yeah.
It starts to look like spinach on its teeth. Right.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, it's awesome though. They have the confidence to do it and to execute it so well. Sounds like
Tom's
it's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know who he is, younger tattooers and stuff, but he's still one of the best portrait tattooers in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, so Tom Renshaw is always someone that I looked at when I was growing up in tattoo magazines and everything like that. And I remember, just constantly looking at everything he was doing. Just how does that happen? How does one get to that level? Because he completely changed, and he brought fine line and realism tattooing to this level that we're at today, and influenced all of these people that we really look up to. But no one's really heard of him. So what happened there? Like where did things change where we weren't looking at the original source anymore? We're just looking at the product from that source.
Yeah, as far as Tom, you mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's Tom. He got his name out there. He really, for a few years, he was really, sending stuff to magazines. At that time, magazines were like everything. There was no social media yet. When nobody had websites or nothing. So it was,
Yeah.
like tattoo magazines were tattooers around the world. That's the only place they saw other artists. So it's a handful of portrait guides around the world. But at that point, this is like 97 is the year I apprenticed, and I apprenticed with Tom at Eternal Tattoos.
Okay.
You could maybe name 10 black and gray portrait tattooers around the world that were like well known
At that time.
It was Tom, there was Jack Rudy, Brian Everett, Kerry Barba, Tintin in France, Philip Lou. Actually, Paul Booth and Guy Aitchison back then were doing killer portraits. So that's 8. There was Darren Steers from England. That's 9. In 97, I'm trying to think. There's Dino Cook had just come around. St. Mark from Indiana. That's 11 right there. You could probably name 20 or so. But now it's like 20,000, It's
Right.
crazy how it is now. But Tom, he got his stuff all over the magazines, had a bunch of articles, did a handful of conventions, and he did that for a couple of years. He didn't like doing conventions. And then after, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, he just kind of went under the radar, and stopped sending shit to magazines. He stopped doing conventions, and he just worked at home. And he had a website finally, but he never updated it, and it was just like nobody heard from him anymore. And a lot of friends have asked, what happened to Tom Renshaw? And I'm like, he's at home working. He works 3 days a week now still. And, but he built up a client base that he was set, he was booked for months in advance. So that's kind of what he wanted to do, get his name out there, and then just be able to just do what he wants.
Yeah.
Not have to
Right.
promote himself.
Right. If he wants to be quiet, he can be quiet. He's got the reputation to sustain himself however he needs. You got months worth of clients coming in. You're going to fill that by that time again, and not needing to feel like you have to go and do all the conventions and things like that. I'm sure that's definitely a good
Some people
feeling.
just like to stay home.
Right.
Like Tom's kind of a homebody, but he would go to Alaska like 1 week or 2 weeks maybe every year. And he got into photographing bears, so he'd go into the wild. And I just talked to him last week, the first time in a couple of years, but he said he would get closer to bears than a lot of professional photographers
Yeah.
who shoot bears and stuff.
That's wild.
I saw some of his pictures, and he's close, man. And he got really good at it.
That's what's awesome, being able to do what you want. You want to
Yeah.
go out and take pictures of bears and stuff. You've been tattooing your whole life, and you're like, no, I want to go. I want to do that still, but I want to have more time to go and do all these other things.
Yeah.
I feel like that's.
And he was
that's
taking
awesome.
photos and then using them for tattoo reference.
Oh,
Same thing Dino
yeah.
Cook was doing. Dino was, in a, underwater, wow,
Right.
I'm only on my first coffee. I'm not awake yet.
It's all right.
But his color realism, is underwater sea life, sharks, turtles.
So does he does he scuba dive and stuff and take
So
photos?
yeah, he got into scuba diving, got really serious into it, started traveling around, scuba diving everywhere. Ken got into photography, and so he got into underwater photography, and getting really good at it. And he got to a point where like he's winning awards for his photography.
That's
let
really
alone the
that's really
hundreds of
cool.
awards he's won for tattooing.
So you
Memories.
get the best of both worlds too. You started
Yeah.
because you want to have fun, you want to get references and stuff, but then it just like becomes this whole new hobby and this whole new art form.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
so that's rad.
That's awesome. I wanted to get into something like that. I ended up getting certified a couple years ago and then ended up moving away from any sort of water. Well, move out here where it's just a lot harder to scuba dive and things. I lived in Michigan where I had at least like the Great Lakes, a lot of inland lakes where you could do just weird little shipwreck dives and stuff like that. But I also want to go to the ocean and do it a lot. Ended up, I got certified and then ended up going to do all my other dives where I was going to go to California, do some actual like to finish the certification, and the red tide came in and I wasn't able to finish it. But that was all for the intention of doing that same thing. I really wanted to start getting like cool photography of like cool things underwater. I ended up buying like a GoPro to do it to start off and stuff. And I really wanted to invest more in like cameras and get more into it. And then, it was about a month later that COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then it was just like that hit. And then, if you don't, I didn't do those final dives. And if you don't do that within like 6 months again
Yeah.
from your certification, you got to do it all over again. And so I just I haven't done it yet. But, oh God, it really got everything moving. I ended up buying all the equipment, but I just think that's so cool. Like I heard about different people doing that and actually going out. Like I go out into nature and take photos and stuff, but really just going more extreme with it.
Yeah.
And doing, let's have a lot of fun and really like go on an extreme adventure and get all the photos and things that we want. Use that for the benefit of both things.
I think it's something that you brought up yesterday when looking at skulls and having your own anatomical skull to look at and create your own reference from. I think it's really important that, as artists, we go through and create our own references so that we can get these unique, come up with something different that hasn't been done before. And coming up with these concepts or a certain specific type of lighting, is really critical. And I think that's what I really admired about Tom and Dean. And anyone out there that goes out and creates their own reference photos or seeks out original content, on whatever subject matter it is, because they're really putting in that extra effort.
Yeah, there's so much more weight that comes with that kind of work.
An original image.
And it shows in the work.
Absolutely.
It always shows in the work. You can see it in the lighting. You can see it in just like little ways things glimmer off, or the way like a texture is, or something like that, or the way the light's hitting something. Where if you didn't take that reference, you're like, man, how did they think of that reflection off that right there? I just wouldn't have thought about that if I was just imagining the light source there.
Right.
But it's like because you had the light there, you're able to see it just how things were like beaming off a spot that was reflecting off another just a little bit. That just gives it that more tinge of realism or something.
And I mean, there are a lot of people out there that don't have that option either. Like I know, for example, Haley does a lot of, space related and solar system.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a trip to space,
That's what I keep hearing. I think someone's working on that though. Elon, maybe.
Man, we just wait
Yeah, I think Elon's got it going.
Yeah, give it 10, 20 years and then it'll be easier.
Then I'll work on those reference photos.
So there are certain things, people that go out there and create a bit more of like an abstract text, or looking for more minimalist text, they're going to struggle with it, right? But that doesn't mean that they can't take the time to refine their drawing skills to create alien landscapes and, different things where maybe physics doesn't, rule the world. So not everyone has the option to take their own reference photos, especially if you do things like mythological creatures. But you can always find something that maybe is similar if you
that's where I think
work it a little bit.
sculpting and stuff comes in. It's so much
Right.
fun. Or like, even we're just like going out and like finding cool sculptures from somebody, or like, it's cool. I think it's coolest to like make your own and do all that. But also like maybe you found like you were at like Hobby Lobby and you seen this dragon tail or something like that in the little like hobby area where they got like just little miniatures and stuff. There's got like little dinosaurs and stuff like that. Take those.
Oh yeah, models are so fun to photograph and like throw the light on.
Zoom into that. You create a light source if you needed to get like some sort of weird bio reference, or you're just kind of thinking outside of the box a little bit.
See, I was like coming up and taking different types of animals that we have in the real world, looking at those and seeing like, the nose of a crocodile, right? Using that as like the front snout of a dragon, then maybe taking like half of the snout of a camel back past the base of its skull, looking at that and saying, okay, well, maybe if I like tweak the brow shape a little bit, that can become the head of a dragon. So now I'm mashing together multiple creatures to create a reference, that never existed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No one's ever done.
Who would think of using a
Absolutely.
camel for a dragon?
Right.
Exactly.
And that adds that extra quality when you're looking at it. And you're like, why does that dragon look like familiarly like weird, but also like super original and wild?
Yeah, finding those unique things that help us create, new and different images. I think that's something that really helps set people apart.
Mhm.
Texture and stuff, just seeing anywhere, like, on rocks and stuff. And Robert Hernandez would do that. Take pictures of, you've been out traveling somewhere, pictures of cracks in the sidewalk.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah.
But it's good. I always say, start doing that. Anything like that, just
Just getting more little reference materials.
you can use it as being face. And do something different, because I'm always doing the same thing. I do freehand demon head or something. Bumps and shit like that. It's like, I gotta start getting a little more creative. Finding some new texture. Like Robert Hernandez,
Yeah.
he's getting better. He's been catching 30-something years, around 30 years, but he's keeps progressing. He's still progressing. A lot of people kind of taper off, like me. Maybe. I'm gonna start as far as like different textures.
Exploring a little bit, some new things and stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Robert does. Look at his new stuff. Zoom in on his texture. It's like, do it. I've watched him do it in person. It's just so fast. He doesn't even think. It's just
Right. Knows exactly how to get that texture in there. This texture, that texture. Oh, cool. Wood texture, bone texture.
But he's kind of a freak of nature. He may not be prepared. And then, like look at his